Your Excellency, Dr. Julius Maado Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Your Excellency, Nader El-Erbawi, Prime Minister of the People's Republic of Algeria, Your Excellency, Ambassador Marie-Antoinette Bosquatre, CEO of the African Peer Review Mechanism, Continental Secretariat. With your permission, I shall follow the lead of my predecessors and stand on preceding protocols duly observed and respected. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me first and foremost to express my gratitude to the government of the Republic of Sierra Leone for hosting us with such hospitality and demonstrating visionary quality in being the host country of such an important forum. And of course, to express my appreciation and gratitude to APRM for this extraordinary, necessary, and timely initiative to invite us on such an important topic as is South-South cooperation. Mine, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, mine will be relatively brief remarks, despite the infamous reputation that I have gained as an interminable speaker. Because I will not be the one, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to have the arrogance to present platitudes as if they were revelation. The world in which we are, the world in which we live, is undergoing since the pandemic, but in particular for reasons that do not require enumeration, passing through an existential transition. Ours is the period of unmaking, of disordering. And of course, in this context, old certainties can no longer be relied upon. But new realities have not yet emerged. In this regard, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, one aspect that I should like, building upon the interventions as valuable as necessary of my preceding speakers, is to mention the obvious. Traditional aid, as we knew it, if it is not already dead, then it is agonizing. And in this regard, most recent events in terms of the traditional funders of our development models, their dismantling, have caused, without a doubt, real suffering in many of our communities. But they also constituted a necessary awakening, recognizing that it was no longer sustainable for our countries of the South to continue to depend on external conditioned financing for the most elemental services that our people demand. But of course, the funding gap is there. But it is not enough, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to only look for other sources of funding. It might be a necessary priority, but it cannot be our collective endeavor. We must, just as we are right as countries, as peoples, to point fingers at the injustices, the inequities of the international order that, yes, has rules that people play differently depending on where they are geographically. But aside from pointing fingers, because pointing fingers we cannot be, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, far from me and far from the OSC to promote a narrative whereby we are constant victims, lonely lovers that lament overnight. We must also know how to take our responsibilities as countries, as peoples, and that means rather than only looking for new funders, new ways of financing out models, we also need to address the structural deficiencies of our economies that generate our dependencies. And at the risk, for the most honourable Minister and Master of Ceremonies for this segment has been very clear with me that I needed to be concise, I will be, Your Excellencies, with your permission, moving fast through those sectors that I consider to be, that we from the OSCE, the Organisation of Southern Cooperation, consider to be essential for our endeavours. The first, of course, is that we must, as countries of the South, learn from each other and pool resources together towards the transformation of our education systems. And when I say that, I say this, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with one determination. Access is important, but it is insufficient. What we ought to do is to transform our education systems so they better respond to our priorities, to our realities, rather than replicate the world. We must have an investment into our health systems, but not merely, again, in terms of access, but also and above all in terms of transforming our healthcare systems through the One Health paradigm that recognizes the interconnection of health between flora, fauna, and the public. That is, recognizing the interconnection between the health of the body, the soil that nourishes it, and the natural life that balances it. We must, of course, speak of technology, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, but very briefly allow me to emphasize, at the risk I promise to you, Wallah, I will move. You know, when an Arab says Wallah, you believe him. But we must invest in technology, but not only technology in the sense of access. We must invest in developing our own technologies, open source. We must invest in sustainable agriculture, but not the one directed towards cash crops destined for exportation, but the one that feeds our peoples. And which also contributes, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, of weaning us off gradually to one of our worst addictions, that of the addiction to the US dollar. We must invest in renewable energies to achieve not only sustainability, but affordability for our industries and our peoples. We must invest in industrialisation, but high value added, because it is no longer sufficient that our countries continue to export raw or intermediary materials and import high value added products. It is mind-boggling that out of the top 10 coffee exporters in the world, 4 are from a region of the world that does not have a single coffee tree. To name those that ought never to be named: France, Italy, Switzerland, and with my apologies, the Dean, Germany. But I say this not as pointing fingers. Germany, Switzerland, France, Italy are doing business. But it is up to us now to start also exporting not green beans, but instant coffee, processed coffee, capsules of coffee. We need the infrastructure that, and I promise this is... We need the infrastructure, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. And I say the infrastructure because what good is it for our countries to speak of exporting capsules of coffee, of exporting cotton made into textile, cocoa made into chocolate bars, if our markets, our economies remain asphyxiated by a lack of infrastructure that allows our products to circulate amongst our nations? We must invest in the infrastructure that connects our peoples and opens the markets of the South to the products of the South. And all of this, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, within a framework indeed of a renewed South-South cooperation architecture, one that recognizes the importance of institutions like the OSCE, but also, and above all, the importance of creating, as we are striving to do from the OSCE within the next year, the operationalization of the Greater South Development Bank, but also the creation from within our country of the necessary clubs of debtors, clubs of coffee producers, OPECs of various sectors that will enable our and regional integration, Your Excellencies, ladies. Regional integration, because South-South cooperation and African integration mutually reinforce each other. And finally, with emphasis, finally, Your Excellency. And finally, people-to-people ties. Because South-South cooperation shall have no future if it is limited exclusively to agreements between our governments. These are essential. They are an imperative. But they are not sustainable if they are not accompanied by the building of bridges amongst our people. And all of this is most important to build a new multilateralism through those endeavors. A multilateralism characterized by three simple principles, but profound: equality amongst parties, equity in our relations, and solidarity that is practiced horizontally rather than charity that is practiced vertically. And I salute APRM for embodying in many respects those principles. And I commend the government of Sierra Leone for having become, in this respect, one of the countries at the vanguard of this reshaping, not for the South, from the South, for humanity. Thank you.
Our brother Manssour Bin Mussallam, he warned us that he had acquired a reputation. And I must say that it seemed like it was a well-earned reputation that he indeed has lived up to. And I should let you know